Now for an update on that radical Islamic compound that we've been reporting on for weeks, and I have a bunch of stuff here as well for you. Now, as you know, several suspects, which police referred to as radicalized Muslims, these were their words. Remember that compound that was way out in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico? And these are the adults, the 5 individuals, including Siraj ibn Wahaj and his wife now and his 2 sisters. These adults were found in possession of weapons, 11 starving children who were dirty, partially clothed, malnourished, that they were allegedly, according to documents and the testimony of the kids themselves with the kids and affidavits told law enforcement, training them to shoot up schools. And they also found documentation of them targeting a number of different places around Atlanta to carry out a reign of terror. They then found the remains of a 3-year-old child, one child, the Siraj Wahaj's son, that had been kidnapped from Georgia and apparently over an exorcism late last year to rid him of whatever evil was causing his health affliction, killed the child, and his remains were found at the compound site. And also these suspects had ties to terror. You had one individual additionally who was there in the country illegally 20 years. There's a lot of stuff to sort through, right? There are a lot of charges. You had law enforcement that said that they were extremists. They found extremist documentation because they were writing down their terror plans. So you would think that these are probably pretty extremely dangerous individuals, right? And yet today, the judge in this case dismissed the charges of 3 of the 5 suspects. Why is that? Because the state had messed up and violated a 10-day rule for a preliminary hearing. And nobody's actually sure, because prosecution and defense were arguing in court as to when the clock started ticking on the 10 days. Siraj Wahaj, whose same-named father was one of the unindicted co-conspirators in the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, and he was also a character witness for defense for the Blind Sheikh trial, and his wife, Janie Lavelle, will remain behind bars on new child abuse charges resulting in death until a no bond hearing. Those were just newly filed by prosecution today. And prosecution, they can file charges based on new evidence. I don't know how they're going to get new evidence because they raised the compound suspiciously. That's kind of crazy. Is this just me, or is all of this a lot harder than it seems like it should be? Ever since this compound was first raided, it really seems like it has been a non-stop bureaucratic disaster that almost let all of them right out on bail right away. Remember, initially they were all held still since then, but they were almost released on $20,000 signature bond, meaning they didn't have to put up any cash unless they violated their terms of release, and they could sign their names and walk out. And now charges are being dropped, though they're credible, because of a procedural misstep. Not to mention, again, that this compound and its members were monitored for suspicions of terrorism for 13 years. So keep in mind that over the 13-year period that the FBI was watching, particularly Siraj Wahaj, during that 13-year time, he kidnapped his son, killed his son, had 11 starving kids out in the middle of the desert somewhere. They were stockpiling items, including one of the illegal aliens that was there living on the compound, stockpiling firearms. And they were training to carry out school shootings and to attack places like Grady Hospital in Atlanta. And the FBI had them on the same watch list, I guess, as the Tsarnaev brothers and the Pulse nightclub murderer and the San Bernardino terrorist and the Garland, Texas terrorist and the Fort Hood terrorist. I could go on and on and on. I don't know what kind of watch list that it is that they're on, but it sounds like the type of watch list where you don't watch the people that are on the list. Is there some reason that this is so difficult to prosecute? Is there some reason why? You would think with the charges that are pending against these individuals, the seriousness of these charges, that this would be a priority and that you wouldn't need to wait 10 days to even have your preliminary hearing, correct? Now remember, these are the same suspects that the defense argued this whole thing was nothing more, and I quote, than anti-Muslim bigotry, because it's bigoted toward Muslims to be suspicious when documentation is found of them planning a terror attack on places in and around Atlanta. You see, it's anti-Muslim bigotry when it's found that they're training 11 starving school children to go and shoot up schools. You see, it's apparently anti-Muslim bigotry, according to the defense, as to why these individuals were apparently being charged and held in the first place, to assume that I don't know, that they could keep a 3-year-old boy alive on the compound, the remains of this child that they found, the remains that had been out there for months in the desert. What in the world is happening here? I think that everybody should keep an eye on this story. And also, why did they raise this? Do you realize the compound isn't there anymore? The only thing that they left behind, according to local NBC affiliates in the area, is ammunition and documentation. Those are the only things they left behind. There's a lot of questions still in the story. Now, we'll watch to see if the state files charges based on new information. But the other individuals that had been released, they're free to go, to walk out today. We'll continue following this story.